let's put it like this, again, to put it mildly. Frank would be generally spokesman for the bourgeoisie, and I'd consider myself to be spokesman for the proletariat, hardworking, downtrodden. And I agree that the downtrodden, hardworking proletariat needs the bourgeoisie to provide them with jobs. So starting on that point, let me ask you, Frank, why are you leaving? Oh, Frank had the Reno Gazette, every other week he had a report that he made on the Reno Gazette every Sunday. Well, most of the time, very well written. Again, not that I always believe it, but very well written articles on in the Reno Gazette, and now he is not doing that anymore. I'm just curious why you're not. You're too busy, or?
Well, I mean, I am making some changes in my life, some of those directed by my wife of 41 years.
There you go.
I'm supposed to be, as you know, retired, and I'm quite active, and as I publish my own newsletter, as I've said, I think there are a variety of reasons. One of the things that you can't do when you write for the media and the Gannett chain and the largest newspaper in Reno is you can't criticize that newspaper.
I thought you were going to say you can't tell the truth.
No, I think you can tell the truth, but it's difficult to criticize the media in general. And I think part of the problem in our community, and this may be an area in which you and I agree, I think part of the problem in this community is the media itself. I think we have citizens out there who believe what the headlines of the Reno Gazette Journal say, or what the 2-minute sound bites on KOLO or one of the other major networks says, and that's really not, as you know, Sam, that's really not enough. You've got to spend a little bit more time involved in these issues if you expect to understand them.
I have a whole show dedicated to the media soon, and I haven't even decided who I'm going to invite on. But you can look through Frank's book. He doesn't have an index in the back, which, it's a great book. But he does have almost an index in the front. It's not alphabetical. And you can just go running through here, issue by issue. I could just go right there. Governing ourselves, choices and challenges. That's a place where Frank and I sort of disagree. Frank, I'm more of the opinion that citizens should have more say on what their government can do. For instance, I hate to go back to the old railroad trench, but I think that on relatively big issues, citizens should be allowed to vote. Whereas, and I'll put words in Frank's mouth, I think he is of the opinion of once we elect these people, even though they're the lowest common denominator in the community, once they're elected, they should more or less be given free rein. Did I say that about right or not?
Well, I don't, Sam. No, I think that first of all we do have a difference of opinion about that. But you're on the side of the angels. 84% of the people in this country, according to David Broder's book, believe that the initiative petition process is the way to go, and they believe that it is the heritage of this country. That's simply not true. Representative government is the heritage of this country. Our forefathers who wrote our Constitution were deathly afraid of the pure democratic process. That's why they wrote it the way they did. What I believe about the representative process is you still have to communicate with the people, and the people have to communicate with their elected leaders. But the time to change policy is every 2 years when you have an opportunity to vote some people out, and I notice you're running for mayor again, Sam, and some people in. And the people make those choices, and then because these issues are complex and difficult to understand sometimes, we turn over the actual decisions on these to those people who have the time to spend on it. I liken it to a plumber. If you hire a plumber and then you bring him in and he starts working on your pipes and stuff, and you're standing there saying, use this wrench, do that, do the other thing, the plumber's going to get tired, and probably your pipes are not going to get fixed. So that's kind of the way I look at representative government.
And not to cast any aspersions on plumbers, I'm glad you used that as the analogy, because I don't even think most of the city council people could even qualify as good plumbers. And I'm not trying to denigrate good plumbers, but that was a good analogy. But I have to admit, through the years, listening to Frank and watching Frank and reading his book, I have to admit that I've been, and slap your hand, Sam, but I've been moving over to that direction. And it really is really true because of the fact that when you, when the government has, in the case of Reno, has $1 million propaganda staff paid for by our taxes, then even, for instance, this railroad trench, the citizens supposedly want it to go out under the ballot. I'll bet my $100 bill that once it gets on the ballot, with all the brainwashing that'll go on, that the citizens are going to vote in favor of the train trench. Even after all this hullabaloo, I still think they'll vote in favor of it. That's what it comes down to. At any rate, glad you mentioned my Sam for Mayor button. I'm not really running for mayor. I'm just put this on to remind everybody.
Covering a hole in your jacket, is it, Sam?
No, I'm trying to remind everybody, including you, Frank, that who knows, and Frank really knows, that Sam would be by far the best mayor for Reno. He'd bring some excitement back to the city. He'd get rid of kickback contracts, offshore bank accounts. But you know what happens, Frank? Is every citizen who sees this, they say, well, Frank, Sam, are you running for mayor? And I say, no. And he said, well, good, because I wouldn't vote for you anyway. And I said, why? He says, well, despite the fact I know you'd be the best person for mayor, Sam, we need you as the watchdog. And I have to admit, between you and me, I enjoy being the watchdog. And I know you enjoy being the watchdog.
Well, Sam, you said I get to ask a question. So can I ask a question for your audience? And that is, exactly, because I think people are a little confused about this. What do you see your role as? I mean, this is a guy who's not lying to you when he says he goes to most of these public meetings. Oh. And, well, all is a little bit extreme, but he goes to most of these public meetings, and he does make an effort to influence the action at those meetings. But my question to you is, what are you trying to accomplish with your interventions at these meetings?
Well, first of all, not to nitpick, but I'm proud of my streak. I've been to every single Reno City Council meeting since every single one. I can't stay for the whole meeting because they double up with Washoe County and all, but I've been to every single meeting since 1995, every airport meeting since 1995, at least the ones they have on public, but that won't go there. What does Sam see himself as? Well, we could have a whole show on that too, but generally speaking, I went to the Air Force Academy. I was taught to defend our nation against enemies outside the border and inside the border. I spent my first umpteen years while I was in the Air Force, regular duty, defending against enemies outside the border. Now that I am quote-unquote retired, and I could be easily up at the lake drinking margaritas and coffee and all that, now I find that we have just as many enemies within the borders. We really, really do. And Frank's smiling at me, but he knows I'm telling the truth. We've got enemies inside our border. We've got nasty people down at City Hall. People with, and I won't go into it, but anyway, it's somewhere along the line. I can't even explain it totally to myself why I do it, but something came upon me, maybe a revelation, an aberration, to go into a crusade to monitor government. And it becomes a snowball going downhill, because the more I monitor, the more monitoring that's necessary, because I go to the meetings, I watch what the Reno Gazette writes, and I say, that's lies, that's a lie. It's like, I got to go down and report the truth somewhere. So I'm basically I'm the counterbalance to you and all of your powerful, friends.
Well, I think, though, that now we've set something up here which I think will help your audience understand really the true differences between us. And I talk about this in the book. Some people approach government as being either incompetent, immoral, or both. And if you have that kind of an approach, you'll take a certain view of what's going on in government activities. I actually see these people that we have in elected offices as people who have stepped forward to do what most of us will not do, and that's run for office and serve in these positions and put up with, and Sam, you have to admit, put up with the Sam Denays and the other people who criticize them.
Name me another person.
But the point I'm trying to get across is I think the attitude that all of us take towards these elected officials is important. They need our help. They need us to be involved. They need to understand our criticism. But I don't think it's fair to them to just assume that all of them are either incompetent or immoral. I think they are, in fact, sometimes wrong, and they are sometimes underpowered intellectually and otherwise to do what they're expected to do. But the fact is they are trying, and we ought to give them credit for that.
Very articulately put, but I don't agree with it. Here's Sam Denay with Sam Denay. I don't get paid for any of this stuff, folks, by the way. Here's Sam Denay with his frayed old $100 bill that I use as a prop to bet against this and that and whatever else.
I see the picture on
But
that.
I've got all these $100. I've got this $100 bill, and I won't even embarrass Frank and ask him how much he gets paid by all these people. So on the one hand, we've got little old Sam Denay all by himself. He says other people, yeah, on NIMBY projects, this not in my backyard project, you'll find somebody challenging. But Frank will have to be honest and admit that Sam Denay is virtually the only person who goes down there to watch, monitor, challenge those people on a regular basis. And it's little old Sam Denay against this monolith. If I started naming the people who I was going to say Frank is in cahoots with, then you would be amazed. And some of you probably already know it. So it's Sam Denay, you take this scale, and I'm just trying to balance it with, and not to mention all the evil things they do down there by having extra cops come down to make sure that I don't say the wrong word, and anytime I do something, make sure that the newspaper never reports it. They do allow me to play my guitar. Allow me? Sure. They're glad I do because they figure if I'm playing my guitar singing little ditties, then I'm not exposing corruption. So they actually they beg me to come down with my guitar.
Well, Sam, there's not that much difference between us in terms of what we actually do. You've already pointed that out.
Exactly.
I mean, look at here. You write. Mm-hmm. The difference is I get paid for what I write. Huh? Is that right?
That's right.
And I get, and I'm not going to lie, I get well paid, but I do not get paid, and I am specifically enjoined by my contractual relationships with my clients from trying to influence a specific issue in a specific way. I am supposed to analyze it and report to them on that, and that's what I do. And I was just looking through my newsletters last night, and if you stacked them on the floor, they'd come this high.
Yes.
Since 140 of them since 1991. Incidentally, I've been going to city council meetings since 1991, and I don't claim to have been to every one of them.
Right, because you're many times you're not there. But we won't argue about that. Frank is there an awful lot. He's in second place, way behind me, but he's third place. There isn't any third place. He's way behind me in attendance at meetings, but he's second place. But then again, like he said, folks, guess what? He gets paid to go there. Sam doesn't, and I'm not complaining. Don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining. I get paid right here. See, this is my little old heart. I get paid right here because my heart feels good for what I do. And I know that I am the good guy. I know I'm the good guy. Sometimes maybe I'm a little too sarcastic. I never use foul language. Maybe I'm a little too bombastic. I never speak louder than the occasion calls for. So my heart is in the right place, and I'm happy with it. Ladies and gentlemen, I do see that they are giving us the big, Frank, God, I'm so glad that you came here. I'm proud to have you on one of my, virtually the first show.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to wonder about both of us, but I want everyone in your audience to know that while we do disagree, we disagree on substance, not as much as people would think, and we certainly disagree on tactics, but I enjoy you as an individual, and I think people as fortunate as I am to know Sam as an individual, as a person, and not a TV personality, would find him fun to be around as well.
Yep, Frank admits, if he would really want to get down to the nitty-gritty, he'd probably admit that he never met anybody more interesting than Sam Denay in his entire life. And he's been around some very important people, much more important than little old Sam Denay. Can they play the guitar, though? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, Frank, I got to close out, and I won't say anything about you after you leave, I promise. That's not fair. So I'm just going to close out with a couple of little songs. By the way, this is over here on the camera. This is Billy Joe Bob Knucklehead, but he's also really known as Tom Clark, former Marine, retired Reno policeman. Great. And this is Keeve Weinstein from New York. He's the fellow, as I said, who had the instant wisdom to recognize, who could see through Sam's modesty and find Sam's great talent through the modesty. And over here, the young lady, actually she said she wanted to remain anonymous. And back in there we have the anonymous director on the panel. Okay, we have Charles Evans back there on the panel. Yay, let's hear it for Charles. Thank you, all of you. And thank you especially, Frank, for coming on down here.
Great, thank you.
So, we got to play this Going Away song. And you're welcome to sit and listen to it. We will be back in a week. Since this is our first show, we don't exactly have we don't have it scheduled, but we will be letting you know when it plays, and it will be as soon as possible, because I know if nobody else, Frank is going to be anxious to see it. Right? Played around, this time played so long, winter's on. so long.